Hey, welcome back to Fix Everything. Today we're going to service a furnace and make sure it is ready for winter. Here in the Northeast, we definitely do this each year. Want to make sure that the furnace is working correctly, not only for efficiency, but for safety. So let's get to it. What we're going to do is we have a standard furnace. Most furnaces look just like this one. There's an upper level and there's a lower level. We're going to take these access panels off and take a look inside and see what we need to do. Very first thing you want to do when you're servicing any furnace that's electrical is turn off the power switch. This particular power switch is mounted right on the side of the furnace. Yours may be up on a wall somewhere, or it may be down on the other side of the furnace. So take a look around, or it might even be at the breaker box. So make sure you shut the power off before you do anything with any kind of servicing of your furnace. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take these two screws off, left and right, and this panel is going to pop forward. So we're going to pull forward and we're going to pull up at the same time, because at the base of this there's a little lip of metal. So we're going to pull out a little bit and then up, and that takes it right off. Set that aside. Be careful, there might be some sharp edges. I've cut myself more than once servicing a furnace. Most furnaces have very similar components. Like to the left here, we have a circuit board. That circuit board is basically the brain that tells the furnace what to do. That doesn't go bad very often, but sometimes it does. It's probably better just to replace the whole board than to mess with troubleshooting it. This is the gas valve. This is actually what turns the gas on and off that your furnace burns. Comes in from the side, from the street. Comes in. This valve has a knob on it, on, off. Make sure that that is off if you're really doing any kind of gas servicing here. And then the tube goes up into the burner and it burns hopefully cleanly. There's a little sight glass right there, and you'll be able to see the furnace when it's activated to see if the flames are blue. That's something you definitely want to look for. If the flames are orange or yellow, there could be an adjustment issue. Get a service or a qualified service person down and make sure that those get adjusted so that you'll burn gas more efficiently. And then I'm going to take a vacuum and I'm going to clean out the bottom. There's some cobwebs in here and some dust. I'm also going to change the filter, which on this particular unit is on the side. This door comes right off. This has a 4-inch media filter on it. These are not cheap, but they should be changed at least once or twice a season. So the overall look of the furnace, hard to see, I'm in kind of a tight space, but you basically have the cold air return. It comes down into the furnace, goes through the filter, which says Honeywell right there, and then the blower, which is in this bottom part here, will push that air back up through the furnace, up through the plenum, up through the top ductwork, and then back into your house again. So it's a cycle. It comes down, and then it goes around in, and then it comes up again. So this filter right here is very important that it's clean to get the best efficiency and less drag in your system. So the next thing you want to check is condensate pipes. So these are clear. There's one here and there's one down in the corner in there. These are clear. I did check those. If you want to take them off and there's debris in there, there's usually some sort of squirrel clamp that's on both sides of that. I'm going to look in the bottom as well to make sure. Over here in the back, you can see like a black box with a cream colored top. That is a transformer, and that provides power to the circuit board in varying amounts. And if you go a little higher here, there's this black disc with 2 wires coming off of it. This is a limit switch. I know. This is the limit switch, and what that does is it will sense how much temperature is behind this metal box near the heat exchanger. If this gets too hot, it will scram the system and shut it down. That's why it's very important to have a fresh furnace filter, because that drag might be enough to overheat this. So you want to make sure you've got a good furnace filter in there often. Then if you sneak back here, I'm going to actually take a look at this in a little bit. That red wire is attached to a flame sensor. If that gets dirty, it might tell the system that there's no flame and you'll get no heat, which is no fun. So that's a very easy clean and a very easy replace, and we'll show you how to do that. So this is the basic overall system. There are, a few other components in here. There's what my dad used to call a squirrel cage in there, which is the blower, and that actually blows all the air through the system. So there's a lot to a furnace, and if you do a few things, you will definitely save some money as far as efficiency goes. You'll also have the satisfaction of knowing that you did it yourself. I have no idea what a service call costs anymore, but if you're unsure of any of these things, obviously call a certified technician. I am not a certified technician, so please be careful when you're doing anything new. Check several sources. So let's get right to it. The first thing I'm going to do is that flame sensor in the back. It's held on by one nut, which looks pretty rusty. And again, there's condensation in this system, so you will see your rusty spots here and there because of the water that's inside. So let's take a look at that and see if it's clean. First thing we're going to do is take that wire off of there. Yeah, sure. Been on there for 1,000 years. But you're going to take that wire off of there, and then we're going to remove this nut. And that's what it looks like. It's a stick. So let's take this out of here and examine that. Doesn't look too bad, but I'm going to give it a buff with some very fine sandpaper and wipe it down with a cloth. This one was not bad at all. And then just give it a wipe down with a cloth. And there you have it. So this could go bad. They run about 10 bucks. So if your furnace is not firing for some reason, it could be this. Okay, going to return that back into its housing with the screw. Make sure it's good and tight, and then take your wire and plug it back into the end. Next thing I'm going to do is the filter. Let's take this door off. You can actually see inside the door. See that junk right there? That's all the crap that's going through your house that sits on all your furniture that you have to dust. So having a good furnace filter is a great idea. This particular system I had converted from the 1-inch filter to the 4-inch. Not sure why I did that, but this media filter right here is like 45 bucks. So I change my filter a good maybe 3 or 4 times a year just to make sure the air is clean and that the system is working at efficiency. So what I did was I kept the box and I just put the 1-inch filter in this box. You want to make sure that you change your filter often, before the heating season, after the heating season, and sometime in midsummer if you're using the AC quite a bit. When you're replacing your filter, make sure that when you look at your system, you know which way the air is traveling. We covered that earlier. So the air in this one is coming down from the cold air exchange into the furnace, into the blower motor. So the air is going this way, and I actually have an arrow here just in case I lose my mind and I'm not sure which way that goes. And if you look on your filter, you'll see the size. Obviously this is 16 inches by 25 inches by 1 inch thick, but somewhere on here there's an airflow arrow. You want to make sure that that airflow arrow is lined up with how your system airflow is. Also, each filter has an FPR rating. This is a 5. I know my system can take 3 to 7. So check the booklet or check with somebody that knows, and somewhere you can actually plug in the model number of your furnace online to make sure that you use the right filter. If this media here is too thick, it's really going to torque on the furnace and make it work a lot harder. If it's too thin, more junk is going to actually go into the air. So you want to use one somewhere in the middle if you can. This one's a 5. Again, this furnace takes a 3 to a 7. I could get a 7 if we had a dusty condition, which would filter out even more if we had people with allergies. But just make sure that that's not too low or too high. And over here in the corner, I do have some backups, which I'm going to grab. And put this down. Obviously, the arrow is correct. And I'm going to put this back in the box and slip it back in. for those of you that have a 1-inch filter, it probably will drop in something like this from the top. You might have a slot there, or you might have a 1-inch slot on the side, and it just slips in this way like that. So in it goes. This is cool because it's got a magnetic catch. Can't miss on that one. Next thing we're going to do is take these 2 screws off here, one here, and we're going to remove this lower panel where the blower is. Make sure there's no junk in there. Make sure that the condensate hoses are clear as well. And again, out and up removes it. You notice there's a switch here, little toggle switch right here. So when that door goes on, it presses against this switch and actually brings power back to the circuit board so that your furnace can run, because as a safety measure, if that's out or that door is missing, they don't want you getting caught up in the squirrel cage down here, because that could hurt a lot. So that is the blower assembly there. I should go in there on the sides. I could remove the side panels and take a look at the fins and clean those fins. I'm sure they have dust on them, but again, we're not in a very dusty environment here, so I'm sure there's dust on there, and that's what the furnace filter will do if any of that dust comes loose. All right, so the condensate hose, which you can see the clear one back in there, comes out of the furnace, comes down here into a tube, and then goes to a tube all the way in the back. Anyway, so I'm looking at this, and the hose is dirty, but it's not clogged. I can actually see through that fairly well. That's just dirt over the years. Just want to make sure that's clear, and it does come out the backside of the furnace over there, as you can see. And that also goes into this pump. And all the condensate from this furnace gets pumped out to the sump crock. I do recommend, if you have a separate pump like that, because we don't have a hole in our basement floor, that you check that as well. Open that up, make sure the float's working okay. I do that once a year. Clean out the box if there's any junk in there. It's usually pretty good. I've had that for a few years. Not sure where I got that. It might have been Harbor Freight, but it's been working well. So make sure that that's operational as well, because all the condensation from your furnace and your AC will go in there and overflow and start pouring out all over your floor if you don't have that working properly. And as long as we're in here, we'll run a quick vac. Nice. Just be careful when you're doing that. You don't knock a wire off or pull something out that shouldn't be out. Put the bottom panel back on. 2 screws, left and right. Now we're going to take a look at the flame box. We're going to take these screws off and take a look at the burn pattern. Make sure it's clean in there, and then we're going to fire it up and take a look at the flames. Okay, I have all 6 screws out. I'm now going to remove the flame door. Should just pull right out. You might have to shimmy it a little bit. Careful of the blue wires you got there, or whatever color wires you have. Just gently drop that down out of the way, and there we go. So there's the burners, just like a stove. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you look back there, you'll see a white box with 2 wires. It's hard to see. I'm going to get in there if I can. But that metal thing with the slot in it is the igniter. It's sitting right next to one of the burners. And as soon as that starts to light up or spark or turn red, it fires up the furnace. If you could take a look at that, it looks sooty. So let's take that off, and we do that by coming down here and taking those 2 screws out. And then we're going to just pull it out. Actually, we have to disconnect that clip first. Okay, there it is. And if you see that screw right there in the front, I had to take that out of there or it was not going to drop down out of that hole. So that screw head was enough to keep that from dropping. So I'm going to take the igniter out and take a look. Yep, full of soot. So let's clean it. So this is like a ceramic material, 2 wires and the wire harness. So looks like it's a very easy replacement if you had to. So let's take a look and see how we can do this. So a little sandpaper in here. This will eventually break. I don't know how many cycles it is, but that gets red hot and fires the gas multiple times in a winter season. So I'm not sure what the life expectancy is on these, but eventually that will crack and go bad. So if your furnace does not fire, that could be one of the reasons as well. So these are some things you can check very easily to see if you can eliminate an issue. So before I put that igniter back on, I'm going to actually vacuum the top of these. There's some dust in there, although the ports, the actual holes, are clear. You want to make sure that that is definitely the case. And if you look in the back, there's large holes. That back in there is the heat exchanger. That's where all the flames burst into there and heat that up so that when the air passes by it and goes up into your house, it's warm. So let's just take our vacuum. And there we go. And don't forget to reconnect the power. Excellent. Igniter cleaned and reinstalled. Okay, I'm going to turn the power switch back on, and then I'm going to go upstairs and turn the thermostat up and call for some heat. Switch on. Thermostat set to 73. The house is at 68, so our furnace should fire up shortly. Just heard a little click. It was a relay in the circuit board sending power to the igniter. As you can see, it's glowing. Gas valve opens and the jets fire. Igniter is no longer needed, so the glowing starts to cool. Electricity is cut off, and now there's a temperature sensor in there that as soon as the heat exchanger gets to a certain temperature, the blower motor, which is at the bottom, will fire and start pushing warm air into the house. And there it goes. So, the flames are nice and blue. If they were orange or yellow, you might want to have the ports adjusted. I know that there's a port, much like a gas grill, that you can regulate how much air to gas mixture you get when you burn. So this is working great. Very pleased. Haven't been in here in quite a while. This furnace is, shouldn't say it or something will go wrong, 23 years old. It's a Kelvinator made by Nordyne, and I think Nordyne is still around because you can certainly get the parts. Look at that igniter in there. It's sitting in a burst of flame, staying hot. It's no wonder those don't go bad sooner. It just sits there in the heat. Alright, I'm going to shut this down now because our limit switch is not connected and we don't want to have an unsafe situation here. So I'm going to go turn the heat off at the thermostat. Gas is cut off, jets go out, blower will still run for a little bit, probably a good 30 to 45 seconds, blowing some extra hot air into the house. So this little sight glass right here could actually, you can actually see the flames from in here, but you can't clean it. So while I'm in here, I'll just wipe that down a little bit so it's a little cleaner, so I can actually see next time I look. So let's put this panel back in. Got a lot of sharp surfaces, like I had mentioned earlier. Be careful. Use some care. You might end up with a laceration of some kind. It's almost inevitable anytime you're working on a furnace to have some sort of a cut due to a sharp edge. So just be careful. So these are some of the things to check before you call somebody, or if you're not feeling comfortable, call somebody and have them take a look at the system so that you have a safe condition. I also recommend having a carbon monoxide detector somewhere in the house. It could be here in the furnace room, or it could be upstairs near the bedrooms. That's probably where you should keep it. I think the manual probably says that that's the best spot, but read the owner's manual. But it's good to have one around just in case there's a problem with your furnace or your hot water tank. This is gas fired as well. For gas, you want to make sure you have a safe condition. Wow, well that concludes the furnace check. Hopefully this helped in some way. Really appreciate you tuning in. Very much appreciate the support. Please subscribe, hit that like button, turn on notifications, and if you have any questions or any feedback, please leave it in the comments below. Thanks again. Have a great day.